Piecework involves compensating individuals based on the quantity of work completed rather than the duration of time spent working. This approach motivates workers to enhance their productivity and efficiency. Rates for piecework are generally established through discussions between the worker and the employer. Several elements are taken into account. Firstly, the labor market conditions and the supply of skilled workers. Secondly, the complexity of the task and the necessary skill level. Thirdly, the time required to finish a unit of work. And fourthly, the desired levels of productivity. The specific unit of work is contingent upon the type of task being performed. Typical units comprise firstly, the quantity of trim pieces installed, secondly, the length of trim pieces installed, and thirdly, the square footage of trim pieces installed. Piecework offers several advantages. Firstly, enhanced productivity. Piecework provides an incentive for workers to perform tasks more rapidly and effectively. Secondly, equitable compensation. Workers receive payment based on their output, irrespective of the time expended. And thirdly, flexibility. Workers have the autonomy to establish their individual tempo and operate at their own convenience. Nevertheless, piecework also presents some challenges. Firstly, quality control. Employers must guarantee that piecework does not undermine the quality of work performed. Secondly, potential for exploitation. Workers might encounter pressure to compromise on quality or safety to augment their output. And thirdly, lack of stability. Income levels may fluctuate depending on the amount of work that is available. To ascertain equitable rates for finished trim piecework, take into account the subsequent factors: the average time required to install a trim piece. Estimate the average duration needed to install a trim piece of typical length and complexity. Local labor rates. Research the hourly remuneration for seasoned electricians in your vicinity. Desired productivity. Ascertain the intended quantity of trim pieces you aspire to have installed per hour and overhead expenses. Incorporate the expenses linked to the operation of your enterprise, such as insurance, equipment, and materials. Once you have gathered these factors, you can compute a fair rate by dividing the hourly labor rate by the intended productivity and multiplying by the average time to install a trim piece. As an illustration, let's assume the average time to install a trim piece is 5 minutes, which translates to 0.8 hours. The local electrician's hourly earnings are $25, the intended productivity is 10 trim pieces per hour, and the overhead expenses amount to 10%. The rate can be computed as follows: rate equals hourly wage divided by target productivity multiplied by average time to install. Rate equals $25 divided by 10 multiplied by 0.8. Rate equals $2 per trim piece. Bear in mind that rates may fluctuate based on the intricacy of the trim work and other variables. To provide a more comprehensive explanation, let's break down each of these factors and their impact on determining piecework rates in the electrical field. Labor market conditions play a crucial role in determining piecework rates. If there is a high demand for skilled electricians and a limited supply, workers may be able to command higher rates for their services. Conversely, if there is a surplus of electricians, rates may be low due to increased competition. Complexity of the task is another important consideration. More complex tasks that require a higher level of skill and expertise typically warrant higher piecework rates. For example, installing intricate trim work with custom designs and angles would likely command a higher rate than installing simple, straight trim pieces. The time it takes to complete a unit of work is a fundamental factor in determining piecework rates. Estimating the average time to install a trim piece accurately is essential for setting fair and competitive rates. This estimate should take into account the complexity of the task, the skill level of the worker, and any potential challenges or obstacles that may arise during the installation process. Desired productivity levels are also a key consideration. Employers need to determine the target number of trim pieces they want installed per hour to ensure that the projects are completed on time and within budget. This target productivity level should be realistic and achievable, taking into account the skill level of the workers and the complexity of the task. Benefits of piecework include, firstly, increased efficiency because workers are motivated to produce as much as possible within a certain time frame. Secondly, workers can earn more for their efforts compared to hourly pay, since the compensation depends on the amount of work done. Thirdly, it is easy to track the cost of a job since the payment is determined by the output. Fourthly, workers have flexibility in setting their own work pace. Challenges of piecework include: firstly, maintaining quality could be a concern, as workers may prioritize speed over accuracy in order to maximize earnings. Secondly, setting fair rates could be difficult, especially if the task is complex or variable. Thirdly, workers might experience inconsistent income due to fluctuating workloads. Fourthly, it could lead to conflicts between workers and management if there are disputes about the amount or quality of work. Local labor rates for experienced electricians in your area can serve as a benchmark for setting piecework rates. Researching these rates will help you ensure that your piecework rates are competitive and attractive to skilled workers. Online job boards, industry associations, and local trade unions can be valuable resources for gathering information on local labor rates. Overhead expenses, such as insurance, tools, and materials, should also be factored into your piecework rates. These expenses can significantly impact your profitability, so it's important to account for them when setting your rates. A common approach is to calculate your total overhead expenses and then allocate a portion of these expenses to each unit of work. Remember to also consider the cost of permits. Calculating a fair rate involves dividing the hourly labor rate by the target productivity and multiplying by the average time to install a trim piece. This formula provides a starting point for determining a competitive and profitable piecework rate. However, it's important to adjust this rate based on the specific factors mentioned above, such as the complexity of the trim work, local labor rates, and overhead expenses. In the example provided, the rate was calculated as follows: rate equals $25 divided by 10 multiplied by 0.8, resulting in a rate of $2 per trim piece. This rate is based on the assumptions that the average time to install a trim piece is 5 minutes, the local electrician's hourly wage is $25, the target productivity is 10 trim pieces per hour, and the overhead expenses are 10%. It's important to note that these assumptions may vary depending on the specific project and location. Remember, rates may vary based on the complexity of the trim work and other factors. More intricate trim work with custom designs and angles would likely command a higher rate than simple, straight trim pieces. Additionally, factors such as the height of the installation, the accessibility of the work area, and the presence of obstacles can also impact the rate. By carefully considering all of these factors, you can determine fair and competitive piecework rates that attract skilled electricians and ensure the profitability of your projects. It's also important to establish clear expectations and communication with your workers regarding the quality of work, the time frame for completion, and the payment terms. This will help prevent misunderstandings and ensure a smooth and successful piecework arrangement. Ultimately, the key to successful piecework lies in finding a balance between incentivizing productivity and maintaining quality. By carefully considering the factors discussed above and establishing clear communication with your workers, you can create a piecework system that benefits both you and your team. In addition to the factors already mentioned, it's also important to consider the potential impact of piecework on worker safety. When workers are paid based on the number of units they complete, they may be tempted to cut corners or take risks in order to increase their output. This can lead to accidents and injuries, which can be costly for both the worker and the employer. To mitigate this risk, it's important to provide workers with proper training and safety equipment, and to emphasize the importance of following safety procedures. It's also important to monitor workers' performance and provide feedback on their safety practices. By creating a culture of safety, you can help ensure that piecework is both productive and safe. Another important consideration is the legal and regulatory framework surrounding piecework. In some jurisdictions, piecework may be subject to specific laws and regulations regarding minimum wage, overtime pay, and worker classification. It's important to familiarize yourself with these laws and regulations to ensure that you are in compliance. You may also want to consult with an attorney or HR professional to ensure that your piecework arrangements are legally sound. In addition to the legal aspects, it's also important to consider the ethical implications of piecework. Some critics argue that piecework can be exploitative, particularly when workers are paid very low rates or are pressured to work long hours. To avoid these ethical concerns, it's important to pay workers fair rates, to provide them with reasonable working conditions, and to respect their right to refuse work that they feel is unsafe or unethical. By treating your workers with respect and dignity, you can create a piecework system that is both ethical and sustainable. When setting piecework rates, it's also important to consider the potential for waste and inefficiency. If workers are paid based on the number of units they complete, they may be tempted to use excessive materials or to perform unnecessary tasks in order to increase their output. This can lead to waste and inefficiency, which can erode your profitability. To mitigate this risk, it's important to provide workers with clear guidelines on how to use materials efficiently and to perform tasks effectively. It's also important to monitor workers' performance and provide feedback on their efficiency. By promoting efficiency, you can help ensure that piecework is both productive and cost-effective. Finally, it's important to recognize that piecework is not always the best solution for every situation. In some cases, hourly pay or salary may be a more appropriate compensation model. For example, if the task is highly complex or variable, it may be difficult to set fair and accurate piecework rates. Additionally, if the task requires a high degree of collaboration or teamwork, piecework may not be the best way to incentivize performance. Ultimately, the best compensation model will depend on the specific circumstances of the job and the goals of the employer. By carefully considering all of the factors discussed above, you can make informed decisions about whether piecework is the right choice for your business. Remember that communication is key in managing piecework arrangements. Firstly, clearly define the scope of work and expectations. Secondly, establish a system for tracking output and payment. Thirdly, provide regular feedback and address any concerns promptly. Fourthly, be transparent about how rates are determined and be willing to negotiate if necessary. Fifthly, foster a culture of trust and respect to encourage collaboration and problem solving. Sixthly, recognize and reward exceptional performance to motivate workers. Seventhly, stay informed about industry best practices and adapt your approach as needed. Eighthly, ensure compliance with all applicable labor laws and regulations. Ninthly, seek professional advice from legal or HR experts if you have any doubts. Tenthly, document all agreements and transactions to avoid misunderstandings. Ultimately, effective communication is essential for creating a positive and productive piecework environment. When implementing a piecework system, it's also important to consider the impact on worker morale and motivation. While piecework can be a powerful incentive for productivity, it can also lead to stress and burnout if not managed properly. To maintain worker morale, it's important to provide workers with adequate rest breaks, to offer opportunities for training and development, and to recognize their contributions. It's also important to create a supportive and collaborative work environment where workers feel valued and respected. By fostering a positive work environment, you can help ensure that piecework is both productive and sustainable. In addition to the internal factors discussed above, it's also important to consider the external environment when setting piecework rates. Factors such as the overall economy, the availability of skilled labor, and the demand for electrical services can all impact the rates that you are able to charge. It's important to stay informed about these external factors and to adjust your rates accordingly. By being responsive to the changing market conditions, you can help ensure that your piecework rates remain competitive and profitable. Finally, it's important to remember that piecework is just one tool in your management toolbox. It's not a magic bullet that will solve all of your productivity problems. To be successful, piecework must be implemented thoughtfully and strategically, and it must be combined with other effective management practices. By taking a holistic approach to management, you can create a high-performing organization that delivers exceptional results. In summary, determining fair and competitive piecework rates for electrical finish trim work requires careful consideration of several factors. Firstly, average time to install a trim piece. Secondly, local labor rates. Thirdly, desired productivity. Fourthly, overhead expenses. Fifthly, market conditions. Sixthly, worker safety. Seventhly, legal compliance. Eighthly, ethical considerations. Ninthly, waste prevention. And 10thly, worker morale. By taking a comprehensive approach and by fostering open communication with your workers, you can create a piecework system that benefits both you and your team.